500 years old, the Dharma, or reality itself, is timeless. And yeah, I really think that the relevance of the Buddha's experience and his teaching obviously is as relevant as ever. We can still put it into practice in our own lives. We can still apply the Buddha's teaching, and it still works. So yeah, this vision is timeless because the Buddha's teaching speaks to all of humanity, and it speaks to the human condition. So there's a moment that we're celebrating today on Buddha Day, the moment of the Buddha's enlightenment, which Sangharakshita says is much more than an intellectual penetration into the nature of the human situation. So there's this sense of really this deepest turning about of all parts of ourselves, our intellect, our emotions, our whole consciousness being transformed. So all parts of ourself understanding this timeless reality and moving in sort of harmony with this timeless reality. Just deciding which way to go. So yeah, we see that Buddhism spread throughout Asia and then other parts of the world. So it really does speak to the human condition. And also, as I mentioned earlier, Triratna is an international community. So we have centres in most continents now, which is wonderful. We just have Buddhist centres all around the world. And yeah, that is because the Dharma speaks to humanity. I really enjoy going to Buddhist centres in different countries, which I've done a few times. And there's, as with even Buddhist centres in this country, you get this sense of a similarity. There's something similar because we're all part of Triratna, but then there's something unique that really sort of mirrors the kind of culture and the environment in that particular place. So there's this lovely kind of dual thing going on, yeah. So I'm going to come back to what it is that the Buddha oriented towards. So the Buddha said that he teaches suffering and the end of suffering. And I think this could be sort of taken as one of the most concise summaries of his mission, if you like. So in the Samyutta Nikaya, there's the Anuradha Sutta. And the Buddha's receiving these questions, or one of the Buddha's disciples is receiving these questions about, does a Buddha exist after death or not? So the Buddha was sometimes asked these really sort of metaphysical questions. And again, he rejected them. So he rejected any sort of speculation. And he kept turning us towards our own experience and towards practical liberation. And it's in that sutta that he there says, I teach suffering and the end of suffering. And I think it's so wonderful because the Buddha was a human, we can really learn from his life, from his actions. I think it's just wonderful that we see there's practical teachings from the Buddha on how to live his life, but there's also his example, you know, how did he meet people? How did he put the Dharma into action in his life? Coming back again to this sense of sort of the timelessness of the Buddha and enlightenment. The Buddha is a manifestation in time and space of something beyond time and space. So that's Sangharakshita, I'll just say it again. The Buddha is the manifestation in time and space of something beyond time and space. And then similarly, we can in fact think of the Buddha as existing simultaneously on two levels. On the level of time as a human, historical figure, and on the level of eternity as reality itself. So the Buddha is both of these. We have the human Buddha that lived in India. We can be inspired by his life. But the Buddha is also this image and symbol of reality itself. Last year, some of us here went on pilgrimage to India. So we went and walked in some of those footsteps of the Buddha. And it's a really wonderful practice to do. I'd really recommend it. Hopefully we'll go again soon as a Sangha at some point. But it's just very, very moving to actually be on that earth that the historical Buddha was on himself. And one of the places that we went to was Bodh Gaya, which obviously is the place of enlightenment. So in Bodh Gaya there's the Mahabodhi temple. And at the Mahabodhi temple there's this place which is known as the Vajrasana, or the diamond throne. So that's said to be where the Buddha sat and gained enlightenment. But actually, even more than that, it's said to be the seat of the enlightenment of all the Buddhas. So the Vajrasana is this place that all the Buddhas over time have sat and gained enlightenment. I find that quite mysterious. So it's said when in Buddhist sort of cosmology, it's said that the Vajrasana was the first point to crystallize in this world system and the last point to dissolve. So it's kind of really saying that the Vajrasana is this very central point in the universe. So I've been talking a bit about orientation, about orienting towards enlightenment and towards the three jewels. And we could say that we're orienting towards that very point, the point where all the Buddhas have gained enlightenment. So before I left to go on the pilgrimage, I thought I'd like to take a little piece of the Buddhist Centre on all of our behalf and make a connection with Bodh Gaya. So I was thinking, what can I take? Anyway, I went down in the cellar. I thought, there's probably some part of the building that I can kind of find in the cellar. And I was sort of just, I don't even know what I was doing. I was just sort of looking around. And anyway, I touched the wall and a piece of brick about like this just fell off, this sort of slim piece of brick. I didn't chip it off, honestly. Anyway, and I was like, perfect. I'm going to take this piece of brick and I'm going to take it to Bodh Gaya, the Mahabodhi temple. So I did. And while I was there with Kamasiri and Kshantika, the three of us did a ritual where we buried that brick in Bodh Gaya on behalf of all of you, on behalf of the whole Sangha, to make that connection between the Nottingham Buddhist Centre and the point of enlightenment. So what I also did was I collected a tiny little bit of earth from Bodh Gaya and brought that back here with me. And that will form part of our ritual that we have later today after the tea break. So we've got this sort of connection, this point of connection between the point of enlightenment, the Vajrasana, and the Nottingham Buddhist Centre. So how else can we connect with the historical Buddha? So pilgrimage is one way of doing that, but there are other ways of doing that as well. So Bhante Sangharakshita, he speaks about his experience of meditation. And it's really mysterious, this. This is in The Sign of the Golden Wheel, so this is his memoirs when he was living in Kalimpong. So he says he has this experience in meditation of questions that he was asking being answered by the Buddha in his meditation. It's quite a long extract, trying to decide which bit to read. Besides positive peace, I also experience feelings of intense love and devotion towards the Buddha, especially in the form of Amitabha and Avalokiteshvara, which was not often the case with me. Sometimes these feelings were accompanied by the corresponding visionary experiences, but more often there would be an awareness of the transcendental being in question without my being conscious of any particular form. On several occasions, this awareness was so strong that I was able to put questions and receive answers. Not that I heard any words, whether my own or the Buddha's. I pronounced the words of my questions subvocally, and those of the Buddha's answers were imprinted directly on my consciousness without being pronounced at all. The first such experience occurred on the morning of February, the diary entry for which reads, "Concentrated. Feeling of total dissociation between past and present life. Doubt. Awareness of answer. Whatever leads to ... is my Dharma. Decided to ask more questions as follows." And he tells us a few questions. Yeah, I'm not going to read any of those out. So what he says after these questions, I will read you one of them in a minute, was concluded that since these were in agreement with the scriptures and were not unreasonable, they could be accepted. The diary entry for the following evening records a similar experience. Good concentration, sensation of positive peace descending. Asked, "What should I do?" Awareness of answer came at once, nothing. Experience of emptiness and stillness. Self reduced to an absolute pinpoint. So that's very mysterious, isn't it? Just this sense that we can perhaps somehow have a sense of the Buddha responding to our questions. We can, of course, read the Pali Canon as well to get closer to the Buddha. So just again, I'm going to read something about Sangharakshita talking about this and how this can help us get closer to the Buddha and his own experience. For example, from reading the Udana or some of the books of the Pali Canon, one can get a vivid sense of the Buddha as he may actually have appeared to people, and of what life in the early days of Buddhism may have been like. I've occasionally had an odd feeling of being in very much the same sort of situation as some of the early disciples of the Buddha. Once, when I was in New Zealand, I found myself wandering in a remote part of the country, in the company of a few friends, and talking with them about the Dharma as if it was something just revealed to mankind. I had a slightly uncanny but powerful sense of the millennia between me and those original followers of the Buddha just falling away. In such cases, one can feel that one is not just imagining something taking place, but that one is actually present. You can be meditating, and it might as well be the 4th or 5th century CE. And when you open your eyes, there is a moment perhaps before your personal historical location swims back into perception. So I don't know about you, but I've very briefly occasionally had some of those glimpses of moments of being able to sort of be a bit beyond time. And actually for me, some of those moments happened when I was on pilgrimage, especially going in some of the Tibetan temples there. There was a real sort of sense of timelessness of the practice that had happened over the years. And I also had this feeling when I walked away from those places that part of me might always be there. That's the only way I can describe it, sort of walking away and feeling like there's a part of me in those places. So we're fortunate to be able to have this sense of a lineage from the Buddha and his experience, this lineage sort of over the years. I was at the cinema last week and saw a film called Underland, which is a documentary based on the book by Robert Macfarlane. And I was really struck in that by the search for meaning that people had. So it was following a physicist doing an experiment deep underground. It was following archaeologists in the caves of Mexico, following their Mayan lineage and history. And it was following an urban explorer who was looking for sort of clues of life underground. So all of these were sort of underground journeys. But yeah, there was this real sort of thread that they were all looking for meaning. They were all interested in human connection and in what humans had done over time. And they were kind of questing for this sense of meaning. There was also this lovely theme through that of a sense of deep time. So the caves really evoked that. Our ancestors, this sense of lineage. And I listened to a talk this week from my friend Chandradasa, and also saw an email from Mahamati, who's the chair of the college, and they described some of these themes a bit as well, as a chain of inspiration and curiosity, stretching from ancient humans around the fire, in community and searching for meaning, to Siddhartha, then to Sangharakshita, Bhante through his teachings, and to us here. So yeah, here we have that lineage, the Buddha to Sangharakshita through his teachings and all those inspiring figures on the refuge tree, to Abhayakirti who founded this centre, and then to us. And we have Triratna's distinctive contribution. So this year is the 50th anniversary of the talks called Buddhism for Today and Tomorrow, sometimes called the Brighton Lectures. And as you know, we've been following that theme here with the theme of the 4 gifts. So in a way, this is just the special, the kind of particular things that Triratna is offering as a Buddhist community. Just very briefly going to say then, the lotus flower, the method of personal development, which symbolises our personal Dharma practice. The golden net symbolises a vision of human existence, and that's about paticca samutpada, conditioned co-production, or our response to the Dharma. The shepherd's round dance, or the nucleus of a new society, symbolising a spiritual community willing to welcome all. And a garden in the wilderness, the blueprint for a new world, describing Triratna and our aspiration to benefit the world. So I think in this time of rapid change and potential sort of really deep division, hopefully Triratna is a movement that is rooted in tradition, but then is shaped to meet us in modern life. I know because when I watched some of that footage from the early days, Abhayakirti mentioned that one of the sort of teachings that he most resonated about from Sangharakshita was that of the new society. So he really sort of resonated with this sense of a new society. And that's what informed his vision here of the evolution shop that he set up in the Broadmarsh Centre and the centre. So he really had this vision of like, this is what could be helpful here in Nottingham. He was very inspired by that. And yeah, we could say that our task in that lineage is to embody and transmit the Dharma, or just keep that breath of inspiration alive. So what lights us up also lit the Buddha up and can keep lighting up those that come through the doors of the Buddhist Centre. So that teaching of suffering and the end of suffering. And then the possibility of freedom, of liberation, of light. There's that wonderful moment on the brink of enlightenment where the Buddha remembered the rose apple tree. So this moment that was free of greed and hatred, and it was easeful, yet in connection with the world as it was. There was no pushing or pulling in that moment. And of course, Sangharakshita introduced us to the possibility of a creative rather than a reactive mind. So not a mechanical, repetitive and unaware mind, but one that's responsive, spontaneous, aware and free. So I'm just going to end with some gratitude. So thankfully for us, people resonated with the Buddha and with Triratna's teachings enough to start this Buddhist centre. So personally as chair, I feel constantly grateful. I feel that we're standing on the shoulders of all the work that came before us. One of those things, to be able to come into the situation of a centre without a mortgage, so the fact that we owned this centre, and a big part of that was due to having the shop, was such a gift to come into a place that we owned, a building that we owned. So there's all this work, seen and unseen, that's led up to the development of this Buddhist centre. So let's go right back to the Buddha. Without enlightenment, there wouldn't be a Nottingham Buddhist Centre. And then, of course, Bhante Sangharakshita and his teachers. And then here at the Buddhist Centre, all the people involved over those 30 years, but actually even before that. So before the centre was set up, there was a group, and a lot of work went into that. I know that Abhayakirti named so many people that had helped him, even before the doors opened, that had helped with all sorts of things to get the Buddhist Centre open. Then those original 4 that came, a team of 4 of them, Abhayakirti, Vimalaprabha, Sanghaketu and Amogashura. All the people that worked in the shop and centre. If you worked in the shop, could you put your hand up? Yeah, there we go. So people who worked in the evolution shop, great. Lost where I was now. Yeah, as I was mentioning earlier, the people here from those very early days, Punyaruchi, Karanavacha, Lin, and then later Artabandhu, Parag will be coming later. Ruth, what year were you? Did you come? You couldn't quite remember.
I first came to the introductory course in 1997.
There we go, so that's a year after the opening. Yeah, so yeah, just many of you here that were here in those really early days. And worked here as well, just gave a lot over the years. I do want to mention as well, this centre and Sangha hasn't been without its difficulties. So there have been times that were really painful and divisive for some people here. But I really saw myself when I came along that through those times, people kept doing all they could to keep orienting towards the 3 jewels and really staying in touch with their practice, either personally or collectively. And I'm so glad that some people who at one point didn't feel welcome in the centre do now. Yeah. So we've had many community members over the years, so maybe put your hand up if you've lived in the community. Or do now, yeah. Great. Yeah. And then I want to mention the previous chairs. So obviously we had Amalakirti, and then Jinnaraja, and then... Oh, Abhayakirti, sorry, it was Amalakirti. There is a link, which you'll hear about later. Abhayakirti. Yeah, Jinnaraja. Oh, was Vimalaprabha chair as well? Oh, Vimalaprabha was chair as well. The second chair, okay, great. Jinnaraja, and then Artabandhu, right? Yeah, great. A number of teams, different people who are council members over that time. So many old members that have come through that time. And then obviously just so many people volunteering. You'll all know here, like all of you have given at some point very, very generously as a volunteer. So our centre totally relies on that love, that generosity. Time, money, energy, love and care from so many people. All those that established the centre, that taught, that volunteered, fundraised, that have created all sorts of wonderful things, that have cleaned, that have organised, that have donated. Everything that's been done to just sustain the conditions for practice in the centre here. And then the teams that we have now, so the centre team, myself, Upekshanandi, who's our women's Mitra convener at the back there, near the door. Eve, who's on the centre team as well, who does all sorts. Until recently we had Nyanaruchi as a men's Mitra convener. And then more recently, Prasanna Chit has stepped in very fully as a volunteer on our centre team, and also Dayajava, who's also sort of our current Mitra Convener rep for the men, which is wonderful. And then the council members, so as well as those people that I've mentioned there, Kamasiri and Kshantika are also on the council at the moment as well. All the order members that are present at the moment. And then we have some really key teams, so we have the maintenance team, the drop-in meditation team,